Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look-back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge help security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guest and completing the form. We review those suggestions monthly and we'll reach out to you once reviewed. Also, if you missed Security Weekly Unlocked, you can now access all the content on demand, whether you register before the live event or not, by visiting securityweekly.com/unlocked and clicking either the button to register or the button to log in. All right, gentlemen, let's get into some articles. There's a couple interesting ones in here. As we were talking about the habits, I pulled it, I try to associate the two segments. And one of the big ones that came up was this whole, what CEOs need to know about the cloud in 2021. And it brought up some very interesting points that I thought would be interesting, because think about this, right? Every business is trying to figure out this whole concept of digital transformation. How do I move forward in the cloud? Is my data safe, et cetera, et cetera? And that will tie into our second story when we talk about culture a bit. So this was a Harvard Business Review article talking about this at the highest levels of the organization.
Right. Matt, and sorry, Matt, I have till 4:15, but I was thinking about this when I was looking at the vaccine registration site.
Yeah.
And it basically tells you because of timeout error. And I put it to anyone to build a website that thousands of people are going to hit all at once and expect it to work in a short period of time.
Right.
I think we get spoiled by large companies like Google and Microsoft and others that, yes, they've put together those sites. They probably also have 1,000 or more engineers
exactly
and years, in a lot of the experience with technology. So, but you have to trust, a CDN like Cloudflare or a cloud hosting provider like Heroku. Not only trust it that it's going to work, trust that you've configured it properly, trust that you've done your diligence to secure it, and trust that they've done their diligence to secure it as well.
And just to throw something else in there, trust that if you're using a partner, they did what they needed, right? Because it's not necessarily always your staff.
It's a whole trust chain. And because let me tell you, you can do internal testing, make sure your stuff is right. When an attacker looks at that, gloves are off.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where the mistake is or where the hole is or who made it.
Right.
That's the hole they're going after. Right.
And I mean, you look at this article, and one of the items is, do I have the skills I need to take advantage of the cloud?
Yeah.
Well, those skills aren't just the enablement piece, the build. It's the secure piece too. Do you have enough talent to be able to build it and secure it? Right.
It's interesting. It flips on its head, Matt. Now I'm thinking you really want to have an external person do an external pen test on this, especially today, because all these components are all over the place.
Well, and I think one of the things that first hit me in this was, first, cloud providers operate comprehensive data security programs so you don't have to.
No, wrong.
No, that's not true.
That's the sad trombone right there. Wah, wah, wah. Johnny, cue it.
That's not true, right? I mean, yes, they have comprehensive data security programs inside, but you got to configure it right. Yeah. There's still data elements you have to own and fess up to. The cloud doesn't take all this away from you, right? And so CEOs have to understand, I can't just throw my stuff in the cloud and say, I wash my hands of it. I'm secure.
Yep. And it's one of those things, again, like we talked about in the last segment. We need to be educating those leaders. We need to be educating those CEOs, right? It's all good for them to read this article and say, these are the things I need to be thinking about. But you want to know what? They're not professionals in the space. Right. The CEOs are not professionals in the space. So we need to be educating them based on these items. These are the things we should be having proactive conversations if they're not coming to us.
And I worry about not small business, but the people that have an advanced cloud architecture where they're using something like a Curix, right? Where they're looking at code, infrastructure as code, and they're looking for the gaps in that. And they've got teams of people looking at all of the cloud stuff. If you don't have that, and that's a small percentage of us.
Yeah, right.
Like that's not everyone that has that level of sophistication.
Oh, yeah. We definitely have to be worried about small business.
Yes,
I mean, at the end of the day, small businesses are the foundation of this country, in the country's economy.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be worried about those small businesses. So it scares me because they don't have the tools that they need and the people that they need, and ultimately the knowledge at the end of the day, right? So, I mean, you know how involved I am within local consortiums, right? And we're in Rhode Island. We have this, in that consortium, we have this program called Road to Resilience. Road meaning Rhode Island, right? A play on words. And that's all dedicated to small business. It's helping small businesses and educate them on being more resilient from a cybersecurity perspective, a business resiliency perspective, because they don't have the tool. They don't have the tools, the people, the money, right?
The expertise.
And the expertise,
you know, companies like LinkedIn, listen to a great podcast on Darknet Diaries, and you know, attackers targeted in 2011 when they had their breach a site reliability engineer. And one thing I took from that was, wow, like LinkedIn's thinking pretty far ahead. Like back then, they even had a role for someone called site reliability engineer. And these large Silicon Valley companies, they have that because they have to, and they have the resources to do it. If you're not one of those top tier, if you're not running a site like LinkedIn, you may not have a site reliability engineer. In fact, you may not know what that role is and how it's evolved. Matt, who did a great interview, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but was talking about defining that role and what that means. It means you have someone that is intimately familiar with all the configs and how they fit together, but is also applying to a security to that as well.
And then holistically, so again, this makes my gear spin, because now the basis of all of these podcasts are to build a community, to make our businesses more secure, our companies more secure. Those small businesses don't have the resources. So what are we going to do as a community to fix that? Volunteer our time. I've spoken in front of chambers of commerce. I've brought into that collaborative, small businesses from around the state. I've had the lieutenant governor come in and have conversations around the importance of cybersecurity to small businesses.
Wait, the current lieutenant or the lieutenant who's
governor
now? Who's the governor now?
He's the governor now. But at the end of the day, we have to push this in the community. There's not enough of us, number one, There's not enough cybersecurity experts and leaders. So I think part of our responsibility to the community as a whole is to dedicate our time to teach. We have to, because it's not out there, It's not out there in the forefront. The last thing a small business is thinking about right now, coming out of COVID, is cyber. They're thinking about, what's my cash flow?
Where's my cloud
next
security posture management?
Where's my next purchase order coming in from? So we have to do that level of diligence.
Yeah, and you have to read this article with a grain of salt, because I'm going to tell you right now, not every small business can do a lift and shift strategy into the cloud.
Oh, absolutely. One of the notes I took was hybrid. I literally put in here in capital letters, hybrid, because it says, it says, can I get rid of my legacy infrastructure once and for all? And I put in there hybrid, because most organizations are going to operate in a hybrid, if not forever, a decade or more. It's going to be hybrid. Unless you built your business on cloud. If you have any type of investment over the course of however many years in on-prem, you're going to keep some level of on-prem.
Yeah, but I mean, think of the easy examples there, Jason. Look at a retailer.
Oh yeah, always.
You could be as big as Home Depot, 100%. Or you're going to have some kind of point of sale system. And
endpoints. Endpoints are always going to be So
I mean, understanding whether you're going to use infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, all the ones in between. Do you have the right resource? I mean, there's a lot of issues here that have to be addressed. This is not just a slam dunk.
Agreed.
So again, take this article with a grain of salt. The reason I brought in the second article was really the importance of culture in digital transformation, because this is where you really have to start thinking about, if I'm going to cloud, how am I going to get there, and what kind of environment do I have to put in place, I have to set the vision. There's certain things you just have to do. You're just not going to just 2 feet right into the deep end of the swimming pool.
I mean, if anything, use that previous article as a conversation starter with your CEO, Send that HBR article over to your CEO and say, hey, I want to talk to you about these few things. And use it just to open up the conversation, if anything.
Right. Yeah. And, and culture is a big part of it. Are you willing to accept and take risks, right? We talk about risk management all the time. Risk is part of this discussion. Yeah. Do you have the skill sets? It points back at that article. I mean, look, we've done some interesting, Paul and I did a segment on ESW last year, just looking at the different cloud services, what layers are managed by the cloud providers, what's still yours, this concept of the data's taken care of. No, app user data is always in your purview as a company.
I tell you what, a great book that you should read if you're interested in this digital transformation and how to do it is The Unicorn Project, because it really is a fictional story about digital transformation and how fictitiously a company did. Now, there's a lot of truths in there. Gene did a lot of great research, of course, in putting those pieces together. And when you listen to it, you're like, oh yeah, I've been in that, that situation before.
Right.
But it shows you both the mistakes and the successes. Yeah. And I think that's an important part of the book, that you can take that as a work and then start to develop your own strategy.
100%. I think the first item is extremely important for leaders within an IT organization. Number one, set the vision, right? What is that outcome? Have that outcome in mind. Have that end game in mind, right? Be able to set that vision of what that transformation is going to look like. Otherwise, it's just going to be nuts and bolted on things. Yeah. And, it's not going to be anything structured. It's not going to be anything strategic.
Your digital transformation strategy shouldn't be about technology at all.
No.
It should be about business goals.
It should be about a business outcome.
That's what I extrapolate. 100%. Did you see me using mirroring there?
I love it. Great job. Great job. You sound just like Jason.
I don't think I sound that smart.
Hey. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be speaking to an outcome.
Yeah, right? What do we want to accomplish?
What do we want to achieve by doing
But that's going to help you. I mean, then when you get in the nuts and bolts, like there's so many different, even just in the application we have, right? How much do we rely on cloud native versus containers versus which software
stack? That's
like
the key.
If we have a goal, that helps us define our requirements,
and it makes you pick what you like a strategy for that, right? So the notes that I took was design the outcome that the team can drive toward, right? Because you want your team bought in, and your team is not just your IT team. Your team is the entire business, right? And then an integrated ecosystem. Design an integrated ecosystem.
Yes.
Because that's going to create a positive business outcome.
That's not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah. But I say it to my team all the time, right? It's like, shoot for the stars. If we hit the moon, we're on our way there, right? Yeah. And it's you got to have this vision to get somewhere. And then if we hit the moon, cool, we made it. All right, now what are we going to do to get to that next hop, right? And it's iterative. It's always a journey. It always has to be a journey. And then obviously with the umbrella of security around all that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how you set a vision for digital transformation within your organization. Again, easy said, right? 3 comments.
Much harder to do. Yeah. Ask all the GameStop Reddit guys, right? They were shooting for the moon. Now they're trying to shoot to Mars so they can land on the moon.
Right. Yeah. It's true. And I liked it here where you can make risk-taking acceptable. The most innovative organizations are going to allow failures to happen. Controlled failures, right? So to be able to have a culture that you're building within an organization, you're going to be at the most innovative when you allow your folks to innovate, break things.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a while, and it's true. And but with all of the cloud services that just still become available, you got to be able to try some of those.
It doesn't change, right? It doesn't change that.
Yeah.
It
still
honestly
keep trying.
Doesn't.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Microsofts and the Amazons and the Googles are doing a lot for us. Right. But they're also providing us with a lot of tools to tinker with.
Yes. More so than ever before.
Ignite just happened, and I took part in Ignite.
Oh, yeah,
and holy crap.
Cool stuff. Yeah.
Holy really crap, cool some of the stuff coming out of Microsoft, right? Yeah. I mean, Microsoft Mesh, it's unbelievable, some of the stuff coming out of Microsoft. But you want to know what? We're going to have to secure that.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Because when you're working, when the business says, hey, I want to try this augmented reality thing. Think about what could happen there, right?
And Microsoft's got a lot of research in that area too, because they had the what is it called? The helmet thing.
The Halo.
Is it the Halo?
HoloLens.
HoloLens. Yeah.
It's my Rhode Island accent. Sorry.
We had one in here, but anyway, we digress. Next story, man.
All right. 4 ways to keep the cybersecurity conversation going after the crisis has passed. so I pulled this article out because there's a couple things in here I don't quite agree with. I do this because I'm like, look, yeah, okay, I get it. I got to match up with business models. I get that. We talk about this all the time. I'm not a big fan of benchmarking. I don't know your take on this, Jason. I don't think it's a bad thing. My concern with benchmarking against competition is it gets you to this point of all I got to do is be better than the bottom. And I don't like that attitude.
No, so and I hate this analogy.
I hate it too.
Where you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just got to be faster than. I hate that because you know what? When you translate that to cyber, you're surrounded by bears. There is nowhere that you can run. Like a bear is going to eat you eventually, which means you're going to have a security breach. So that analogy is complete crap.
I kill that question in one answer. Our competition's not us.
Yeah.
100%. Every organization is different. You could take someone in a similar market who's doing the same types of services, but they don't have the same CEO, they don't have the same CFO, they don't have the same services leader, they don't have the same people, they don't have the same customers, same clients. You can't. You
don't have the same threat actors going after every single organization. That also assumes that every threat actor is a bear. Not every threat actor is a bear.
When you can tell me that our organization's a mirror image of our competitors, all right.
Yeah, right.
Then we'll talk.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, does that mean attackers going up to you or your competition? They're going to pick and choose based on what you have and your uniqueness. And
exactly. So
the second one I don't like is the leverage of the push for legislation. It's like no.
That's just
don't go down the compliant check mark path.
Right.
Come on.
That's right.
I mean, there are positive things there. Legislation has its place. Compliance has its place. But it doesn't replace the things you have to do to be able to secure your own organization. Yes, they help.
How many millions of times have we said compliance should be a byproduct of strong security? Now, if you want to advocate, I would be with you in Washington, D.C. in a heartbeat, Paul and Matt, if we could go advocate for national privacy laws so we don't have to worry about 50 to manage. I'd go advocate for that. But, you know what I mean?
We almost had that.
Yeah.
Did you hear? Almost. So the Patriot Act. There was legislation for something very similar,
but part of a bigger package.
Yeah, similar to GDPR in the U.S. But then September 11th, 2001 happened and the legislation quickly pivoted to get the Patriot Act, which ironically was the exact opposite of having privacy laws. Exactly.
Yeah, it went in the other direction. That's why I pulled in the actionable tips to actually communicate with the board. Because look, the last item in the previous article is build relationships. And that really ties into this article to say, look, you've got to build a rapport with the board. You have to build a rapport with the executive team. That's how you're going to keep the cybersecurity conversation going. It's not to align to the next regulation or to baseline against your competition.
Agreed.
It's building internal relationships, having a conversation, and presenting to the board
100%.
in a constructive way.
Right, and learning the risk appetite of the board. Right, and that's a whole other dynamic from the previous article that I didn't even take into account. The board has its own risk appetite and is different from another competitor's board, right? So it's.
But I really like their examples on watching our language because I think when we're talking among us, we can throw around the term MITRE attack framework.
Yeah, totally.
Right, but when you're talking to the board, this is a practical lesson, thank God, because we see so many things about talking to the board that just aren't practical. Like, you have to be able to explain that in a sentence.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
Don't geek out. Don't geek out with the board, right?
Yeah, I mean, whoever the author was, Virginia, did a great job of,
totally.
like in plain English, explain to your board what MITRE attack is. And as she says, it's a framework of known adversary tactics, techniques, and common knowledge, a kind of periodic table that lists, organizes malicious actors and behavior.
Speak the language of the business.
That you can understand, like everyone understands. We all were presented with the periodic table of elements in school, right? Like we understand.
But it's speak the language of the business, right? I mean, unless you have a board of all cybersecurity or IT experts, right? It's not the time to geek out, right?
Right.
So
but I like MITRE attack explaining it that way and explaining it how we're using that as a measurement in a guideline versus going, how much better are they when our competition or adjacent markets or anything like that? Use it as like, this is an industry standard thing.
The board will understand that.
We get good at this. We're good at detecting and preventing attacks from our adversaries. Maybe not all known today, but MITRE does a pretty good job.
Yeah, and the one I like the best, because this always guaranteed 100% happens, be ready to pivot. The conversation will not go how you have your presentation built.
Yep.
Absolutely will not. It will go down a rabbit hole in a heartbeat. So be ready to pivot, bring your A game to the table, know that it's not, don't get nervous or get anxiety because the conversation's shifting to something else. It will shift to something else. That's it. Be ready to pivot. The conversations will turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I threw this article in around some of the root causes of breaches. It was really more about how to handle, prioritization, investment, and execution after a breach. I thought it had some good points in here around positioning your investment and being able to get some of the funding and things that you need. I thought it was a pretty decent article from that perspective. But when you read the title, you're like, wait, is it going to get me into the root causes of why a breach happens?
No.
Which was,
All right. I mean, it's things we've talked about, right?
But I think a key that one of the things that keeps me up at night, especially when we talk about breaches and good cybersecurity, is you can have that one day, and then the next day it's not the same and it's not as good. It's not as effective. And how do you monitor those changes and deltas and keep up with that after time? You got a big breach, so we put all these controls in place. Yeah. But then, everyone listening to this show has experienced this, right? Those can slowly start to erode over time. And if you don't have a CISO and a team that's monitoring that and managing that, you're going to be right back in the same boat. They probably got you breached in the first place.
Yeah, totally.
And that's where the empowering a CISO section of this article I read that was the strongest part.
Yes. Right. Give it.
That's the most important
Give
thing.
them the influence.
Yep.
Give them the budget. Right.
Yep.
Give them the rapport with all the other leaders at the end of the day, right? Yep. And I mean, make sure you're hiring correctly too, right? You're hiring the right type of CISO. You're hiring for what you're expecting that outcome to be.
Yeah.
We talk about the different kind of CISOs all the time, right?
Yes.
Yep, we do. And if you're hiring, what are the new roles that you need to be hiring for? This is a list of the 8 roles, the new roles for 2021 in the cybersecurity team. Some of these are really, really interesting to me. First one is identity and access management engineer. Now think about that for a second. We talk about identity, right? We talk about identity and access management solutions. Here's somebody to actually probably make it work, because multi-factor authentication is complex and difficult. Somebody's got to be able to pull all these pieces together.
Well, I think it's important to understand that there are these different roles, because I think in my experience, and certainly many others, when you look at some organizations, they may be really heavy in one of these areas, but not, because I can think of organizations that really, like, what they called the security department was identity and access management engineers. And that was security. I mean, they were lacking in all those other areas, but then vice versa, right? The other organizations' security might be vulnerability risk analysts and engineers, but not have any resources in identity and access management. That you need to balance across.
Yeah, and I would argue that a lot of these roles existed as part of another role.
Yes.
And now these have to be new focuses of a role within your security team, right?
I think each of these areas need to have the appropriate amount of focus. Maybe you don't have someone who is a full-time threat hunter, but it's part of another role, and threat hunting is an activity that you're doing.
In some instances, it may not exist at all in anyone's role. Right. So you have to bring that in.
Restructure your team to.
In other instances, if you're a large enough organization, it may be part of someone else's 83 other roles. Right. Where it's now, all right, you got to put a little bit more focus on this and make it a dedicated role.
There's some that are in here that are really interesting to me because they show the trends of where we're going. Right.
Yep.
Third-party risk is back in the spotlight after SolarWinds, right? Yep. I mean, that's where I part of my career was in third-party risk management, right? So it's always been something that I've thought about, but some organizations haven't. You've got DevSec, Ops, security engineer because
which is
of
redundant.
The cloud.
Yeah,
kind of.
I think that's a redundant title, because I think it is a security engineer. I think more, as I mentioned previously, I think site reliability engineer is oftentimes the role that really is DevSecOps, because you're in all 3 of those areas and are able to affect changes and maintain controls throughout development, security, and operations. And having that role, again, is one of, at a certain size company, you're going to need people that can do that, because you're going to be moving so fast. If those are 3 different roles, you're not going to be able to coordinate fast enough to push that app out in a secure and reliable manner. And that's why I really like the transformation of roles in organizations today. But really is one person's responsibility to build all those pieces together and have that focus.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
notice they said, sorry, Jason.
No, I was just going to kind of shift the conversation a little bit and say I'm surprised there wasn't any type of role that was revolved around analytics, like data analytics. Do you know what I mean?
That's a good point.
Like security analytics is such an important facet these days, especially with most organizations dealing with so much data, so many tools, so many log sources. I think data analytics is a big piece of a role that's missing here.
I agree. There was just looking at what tools and processes are effective and which ones aren't could be definitely a full-time role.
100%.
Agreed.
I mean, they have vulnerability risk analysts, but that's not what I'm talking about.
No.
I'm talking like a data scientist for security.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no MLAI role here, right? Somebody to analyze the data and make some better decisions out of that data that's coming across. Cloud's here, though. I mean, cloud security architect. Sure. We were talking about the cloud earlier, right? That is an important role as you're going through your digital transformation. And then I love number 8 because it's the CISO themselves.
Yeah. But to Jason's point, you've got different CISOs. Different CISOs. Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it.
Different types of CISOs. But again, reiterating the need for the CISO.
Totally.
Give them, empower them. Go back to the previous article and empower them.
And at the end of the day, if you are applying and interviewing for a CISO role, a security leadership role, interview the organization back because you need to make sure you're the fit for them, right? That the cultures align and you're in the right position to be successful.
Yeah, and you're going to get the resources you need to be successful.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.